So for today, we're going to talk about right action or wise action. And wise action is to not kill or harm, to not steal or take that which is not freely offered, to not engage in sexual misconduct, and to not take intoxicants. But I am altering that last one for us to not get intoxicated, because we do want to make all of this practical for everyone. So we can have that aspiration to not take intoxicants, but for now. So this path, so wise action is really informing us, it's reminding us, this is a non-violent path. It is a non-harming path. It is a gentle path. It's a path of kindness and open-heartedness and inclusion, forgiveness and patience and compassion. And wise action is to remind us the consequences of our actions, to make sure that we aren't in any way harming ourselves, making the path more difficult. You know, as an example, if we were at war and we're killing people all day, it would be really hard to sit and meditate after we've just killed people, right? Think of the imprints that's leaving in our heads from killing people. It'd be really hard to still the mind. Or if we are hungover, right? Like really hungover, I mean, how hard it would be to really still the mind. Or if we're having an affair, right? Really being mischievous and lying and deceitful and potentially harming someone. Not potentially, we are harming someone. And just the fear around that, like how hard it would be to sit and meditate. And so wise action is not me sitting here lecturing anyone by any stretch. And it's not a judgment, it's not punitive, and it's not suggesting that what we're doing is good or bad. What it's saying is that these things are harming your path. If you do these things, it's going to be really hard for you to become enlightened, because the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. And so it's a framework, it's a way for us to keep looking at our actions, to understand what are the consequences of our actions. What am I doing right now? Am I aware of what I'm doing right now? Because so much of the time, we don't even realize when we are kind of slipping into an unwise action. And I'm going to give an example, and this is a personal example of just a recent thing that happened to me where I realized I was not acting wisely. My actions were definitely not wise, they were not right. So I want to set this up. So last week I did a workshop here, a half-day workshop, and it wasn't a lot of money for the workshop. It was 1,200 pesos, which is about $70. So I had decided, because it's not a lot of money, normally I invoice those things through PayPal. Most of you are on PayPal, what you pay for this each month. But they take out their fees, and I thought, it's not a lot of money, I'll just have people bring cash. So that was fine, nothing wrong there. But then it started getting in my head, I'm like, oh, I won't have to file taxes. I won't have to report this because there'll be no record when I run my PayPal account at the end of the year. And I started thinking, okay, I'm not going to report my taxes for this. I'm not going to report this income, on my taxes. And then I was talking with someone about it, and she was talking about how she was going to pay. And it wasn't solidified in my head, but then it came out. I was talking about the fees, and I was like, yeah, and then I have to report it on my taxes. And as soon as the words came out of my mouth, it just felt awful. I felt squeamish. I was like, oh my God. And then that afternoon, when I sat to meditate, it just kept coming up. Like it was kind of a thought in my head before. It's like, but now you've said this is what you're going to do. That's stealing. If you're not reporting income, that's stealing, right? It's just like getting a W-2 or a 1099 and thinking you can change the number on there and reduce it. It's stealing. And when it hit me like that, and I realized, like, oh my God, is my integrity worth like $100? That's what I would have paid in taxes. That's what I will pay in taxes because I will be reporting it. And so when you think about, like, is my integrity worth this? And I share that example, one, to say we're all human, and I really want to show that wise action is a framework for us to help keep us on track, but to also help us be more aware of just when we're falling into that stealing or taking that which is not freely offered. Because in our society, most people wouldn't bat an eyelash at fudging our taxes, kind of putting a few extra expenses here, kind of taking some income down there if you have that flexibility. No one would think twice about it. And I wasn't really thinking twice about it. And then until it hit me when I was meditating. You can't hide from it then. And I'm like, okay, got to report that. But then how many other things are we doing that in society we don't really think of as stealing, but it's absolutely stealing? When we're downloading music and not paying for it, or when someone's handing us a thumb drive with a bunch of movies that we haven't paid for, or when maybe we share a password to a subscription service that we have and we give it to someone else and they haven't paid. And that was meant to be for us, not to be giving to someone else. That's stealing. And it's leaving an imprint in our minds. And just all of the little things that we do. We go to a hotel room and we think everything's up for grabs. If it's not nailed down, take it, right? We think, put everything in our suitcase, right? That's stealing. I used to always do this. This was like 20 plus years ago, before I was a Buddhist. The little equal packets in the restaurant. Every time I'd go into a restaurant and there were little equal packets, I would put them in my purse. I knew it was stealing. I definitely didn't do it when the waitress was looking at me. But for some reason, I just thought, I'll take them. I mean, it was a few dollars for 100 packets of equal. But, I just would take them every time. That's stealing. And it does leave an imprint on our mind. And it's a slippery slope every time we do that. And it's the same with sexual misconduct. So we tend to think of sexual misconduct most generally as having sex with someone when they haven't consented, they're not an appropriate age, when it's not our partner or they're married. But it also goes beyond that as well. It goes to flirting with someone who's not our partner or who's married, to having inappropriate text messages with someone who's not our partner or who's married. I mean, that's deceitful. It's harmful. Even there's so much of this now, like on Facebook Messenger, where people are in touch with old high school friends, old high school flames, and they even call it emotional affairs because maybe they're on other sides of the country. But clearly the exchange is completely inappropriate. Married partners having completely inappropriate conversations with old friends. And it's causing harm. Because if your partner were to find it, it would hurt them. And it's harming us because we would be being deceitful. And it's really hard to sit and meditate when we've been deceitful. It's really hard to quiet the mind. And when it comes to drinking or doing drugs, and it's really hard because our culture is very much set up around alcohol, in particular, weed in California, Colorado, Washington. And it's really hard to not partake in that. And so I'm not suggesting that you don't partake in it. What I am suggesting is that you don't get intoxicated. Because if you get intoxicated, it's going to be really hard to quiet your mind. It's going to be really hard to still your mind. I mean, we know, after a night out drinking, we've done something stupid, we've said something stupid, right? Or at least we're going to play it back like that in our minds, and kind of hard to sit there and meditate, feeling groggy and feeling bad, and then you remember, oh my God, what did I do? That was crazy. So really hard to still our mind. It really isn't, it's a hindrance on our path. It leaves an imprint. in our minds. And so I would just make a suggestion to make this a little more practical for us. If you drink, before you go out and you drink, and there's a lot of happy hour events down here, before you go to happy hour, to sit and meditate for 5 minutes. Connect to your heart center. Remember what's most important. Connect, so that when you go to the happy hour and you have a glass of wine or a beer or something or a cocktail, it's just kind of nice to have, but it's not that neediness, I need this drink in order to feel okay. It's like, okay, I can have 1, maybe 2 if you can handle it, but really try and limit it. Because this is the path to enlightenment. And this is the Buddha's prescription. In saying, make sure that your actions are wise. There are consequences for our actions. And we need to know what they are. And when it comes to killing, I mean, we all kill every single day. Every time we walk over outside, we're walking on ants. Every time we're driving our cars, bugs are hitting it. We have, from the drive here to La Paz, for the last couple months, and it's a little less now, but like 6-7 weeks ago, you'd be driving and just thousands of yellow butterflies, just thousands of them. It was beautiful, and you start driving, you're like, this is beautiful, oh my gosh. And then it's like splat, 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 and you're just killing them all. And it's horrifying. And you're thinking, oh my God, well, what do I do? Do I stop? Do I start driving 5 miles an hour? Because, and have everyone back up behind me? I'm like, no, we can't do that either. It does have to be practical. I mean, take a moment, think about it. Oh, I'm sorry. I do. I kind of just put my hand here. I'll do a quick, I'm sorry the whole time driving to La Paz. I'm so sorry. Because to acknowledge it was a life given so that I could get to La Paz to get what I needed. And that leaves an imprint when we're acknowledging that. Or when it's a mouse or some other kind of rodent, a rat, a squirrel, something else, to think about what's a humane way that I can remove this rodent from my house. A scorpion, or ants. Like, what is the most humane way that I can remove this? Because if we just kill things because we're like, oh, that's gross, I don't like that, oh, that, I don't like that, and we just kill things as though their lives don't matter, that leaves an imprint on our mind. We have to be careful about that. And I'm not saying, I use flea medicine for Bodhi. I drew my line at, Doreen knows, I drew my line at the termites. Like, okay, we'll exterminate the termites. But before I did that, I also went around and said, please leave. They're coming. They're coming. I'm giving you your notice. And I did that because it was to acknowledge that there was a life there that was going to be killed. I didn't think they were really going to pay attention to me. Maybe. But it was to leave a good imprint on my mind, to acknowledge that another life was going to be taken. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. We can't compartmentalize things and think, I want to be one with everything. I want to feel this grand connection to everything. But that mosquito doesn't matter over there, or that mouse over there doesn't matter because I don't like it. No, it all matters. It all leaves imprints on our minds. And I don't think we can pretend to ignore the extreme cruelty and suffering that happens in the food industry to animals. None of us can ignore it anymore. We all know what's happening. And I'm not even suggesting, and I'm not judging, and I'm not telling you what to do. I know most people are not going to be vegans or vegetarians. But maybe just in an acknowledgement of what really is going on, to maybe eat, maybe one day a week you say, I am going to be a vegetarian. Try to do less of it. If you're eating something that an animal's life, meat or dairy, to just take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for your life. Your life was not in vain. So for this food, the food that I'm eating right now, for the body that I'm eating, it's sustaining my life. That with this sustenance, I will make sure that I use this to be more compassionate, to be kinder, to be more generous. And I have gratitude for the life that was given. Maybe something just a little short like that. Just to acknowledge the life that was given. Very much like what the Native Americans do. When they would kill a buffalo, they would have a big ceremony in gratitude and thank you to the buffalo, acknowledging the life that was given, because that leaves an imprint on our mind, a different imprint. That, yeah, I'm acknowledging your life was given for me, and I'm going to use it wisely. I'm going to use this sustenance wisely. Thank you. It changes the imprint. So for every action, there is a consequence. And with wise action, it's trying to direct us. It's trying to give us the guardrails to say, look, follow this as best you can. It's not the commandments. It's not you're a bad person when you don't follow it. It's saying, look for yourself. See the consequences of your actions. Look at the news you're consuming. How violent a lot of the news is. How we know about every war happening around the world, every school shooting, every child that's missing. It's not natural for us to know all of this. And how harmful that is to us to understand that. Right? That if we want to follow the Eightfold Path, if we really are on the path to liberation, to nirvana, to enlightenment, to not harm ourselves by consuming too much media, too much news, just too much anything on a screen, not this, so anything else. But to really understand the violence that we are subjecting ourselves to. It's not normal for us to experience this much. So, wise action. Try not to kill or harm. Try not to steal or take that which is not freely offered. Really try not to engage in sexual misconduct. And try not to be intoxicated. To treat your mind as the precious jewel that it is. That it can take you to liberation, or we know it can be a nightmare. It can be a torture scenario. Wise action is trying to direct us in the right way. So for us to keep examining, to keep looking at our lives, am I following wise actions? And if you're not, don't beat yourself up about it, correct it. Go, okay, now I'll go forward like this. Thank you, Buddha. Thank you for these wise words to help me.